Hi, I'm Clara, and I'm an intern at Venk. In this video, I'm going to talk about two women who became symbols of freedom and independence in their country. First, I'm going to talk about the freedom fighter Yu Guan-sun. Yu Guan-sun was a 16-year-old high school student known as one of the main activists and organizers of the Korean resistance movement of 1919 against the Japanese occupation. She died in 1920 at the age of 17 as a result of the torture she suffered in prison by the Japanese imperialist army. Born in Korea in Cheonan in 1902, she was quickly noticed as a very intelligent child, and she was one of the few Korean girls who were able to continue her studies in Seoul at Hwa Human's High School on a scholarship. In the spring of 1919, when she was only 16 years old, she participated in the March 1st, 1919 peace movement to protest the Japanese occupation of Korea. March 10, the Japanese government ordered all Korean schools to close, fearing another demonstration. Yu Guan-sun returned to her hometown, encouraging and shaping nationalist and independent sentiment in her city, including going door to door and distributing Korean flags. She gathered the inhabitants of her city and organized a pacifist march on April 1st, 1919, in Cheonan, 1 month after the demonstrations in Seoul. The march was suppressed by the Japanese colonial army, killing 19 civilians, including her two parents. Arrested by the police, she was sentenced to 7 years in prison. While in prison, Yu Guan-sun wrote, "Even though my fingernails are pulled out, my nose and ears torn, and my legs and arms crushed, this physical pain doesn't compare to the pain of losing my nation. My only remorse is that I cannot do more than devote my life to this country." Yu Guan-sun died of her injuries in September 1920, when she was only 17 years old. Of the approximately 45,000 Koreans imprisoned by the Japanese colonial army, about 7,500 died as a result of torture in prison. Although the March 1st movement did not lead to Korean liberation, which came in 1945 at the end of World War II, it crystallized the country's nationalist and independent sentiment. Yu Guan-sun is considered as the face of the Korean independence movement, died as a hero for her country, as well as many other Korean women. Now I'm going to present you Joan of Arc, or Jeanne d'Arc in French, who led fight to repel the English in 1492 during the 100 Years' War. This young peasant girl, who lived at the beginning of the 15th century, changed the course of the 100 Years' War by lifting the siege of the city of Orléans in 1429, and by leading French King Charles VII to his coronation in Reims. The 100 Years' War was a conflict between the Kingdom of France and the Kingdom of England at the end of the Middle Ages. It began in 1337, when the King of England claimed the crown of France, and ended in 1453 with a French victory. Joan of Arc's rebellious spirit motivated the French troops to keep fighting. Thanks to her actions during the war, Charles VII reorganized his army and eventually retook Paris and Normandy. Joan of Arc was taken prisoner in front of Compiègne, near Paris, and was delivered to the British Army. She was condemned by the Catholic Church for her actions after the long trial, and she ended her days burned at the stakes at the age of 19. The reason that stuck for Joan of Arc burning at the stake was the witchcraft accusation. The Catholic Church, which had once condemned Joan, had to overturn her conviction in 1456. The rehabilitation of Joan of Arc was necessary so that no one could question the validity of the coronation of Charles VII, which rejected the English claims to the crown of France. After several centuries, the Church went further, elevating to the rank of the celestial elect. In 1920, she became Saint Joan of Arc. Joan of Arc is one of the founding myths of French history. Over the years, historians considered her as the first hero to fight against the enemy and to create a national spirit. Without Yu Guansun and Joan of Arc, Korean and French history might be very different. They both sparked the revival of nationalist spirit in their country, shaping Korean and French minds among generations to come. Even though their actions did not lead directly to liberation or victory, they all crystallized the feeling of independence and unity in the nation and inspired generations to come. Thank you.